The Kenyan flower industry is one of the largest in the world. According to Kenya Flower Council, 4 million people's livelihood depends on it. The country exports its cut flowers to more than 60 market destinations worldwide, with its main markets being Europe, Australia, and Japan. As competition rises, there is a move towards growing new markets in the Middle East, Russia, America, and China. Floriculture is one of Kenya's top foreign exchange earners, generating over $1 billion annually and contributing to 1% of the GDP. 38% of all rose-cut flower imports to the European Union originate from Kenya. Primarosa, a family-owned business, started growing roses 20 years ago. Today, they export 100 million roses annually across the world. I visited their 70-hectare farm located about 200 kilometers from Nairobi, Kenya's capital city.
Well, when we initially started growing roses as a business, we were 80% relying on the auctions and 20% on direct sales. The time has now come after 15 odd years of being in this business. We now are doing 80% of direct sales and 20% into the auctions in Holland.
Any particular reason why the shift from auction sales to direct sales?
Well, first of all, getting to know your client. Customer is king, and if we can have direct relationships with our customers, that's obviously very important for us. Secondly, obviously we have a much higher revenue when it comes to dealing with direct sales.
UK and Europe in general happens to be Kenya's biggest market for flower exports. Any concerns about Brexit?
I'm from the school of thought that Brexit will actually have a positive impact on the 300 exporters of roses in Kenya today. Brexit allows for us to divert a lot of business from Holland to Kenya, because at the moment, for example, you have $3 billion worth of roses that are imported into the UK from Holland. Now, with a Brexit deal in place, we can now hope that the UK will deal directly with Kenyan flower growers like ourselves to sell those flowers into that market. So I think Brexit is something that we're hopeful for, but at the same time I think what's more damaging for us is if there's a no-deal Brexit, because if that's the case, then the UK will have to follow the World Trade Organization's rules on tariffs, which can increase tariffs on cut roses between 8.5% to 12%, which will now affect our bottom line, increase the prices of our roses in our international markets, and therefore make us less competitive in comparison to our counterparts like Colombia, Ecuador, and the Netherlands.
What are you doing to prepare for Brexit?
We're trying to remain competitive. I think that's the only thing we can do. We've got to concentrate on the quality of our product, we've got to invest in training our people, and we've got to remain competitive in terms of our pricing.
Is this also pushing for flower farmers to diversify markets as well?
Yes, it definitely is, but I think that any industry that is a top foreign exchange earner for this country is going to face is going to have some impact with Brexit coming into place. So whether you're into flowers or whether you're into vegetables or whether you're into tourism, Brexit is going to have some sort of an effect on you. So the sooner you accept that, the UK is a major trading partner for Kenya, and we have had great relations for the longest time. So we can only hope that Brexit will bring something positive for whichever industry any of us are in.
Thanks, Bobby.
Thank you.
These boxes of flowers in this truck will soon be off to Nairobi, and then after that, they'll fly thousands of kilometers to a flower auction somewhere in Europe before ending up in shopping malls, offices, and flower shops elsewhere in the world. In part 2 of the journey, we look at how the auctioneering process has changed in the world's largest flower auction. Flower farms that export must conform to certain market regulations and standards, which the Kenya Plant Health Inspectorate Service, or KEPIS, certifies. Once the flowers are inspected, they're packed up onto a plane where they'll be flown to their final destinations. One of these destinations, Amsterdam, which also happens to be home to the world's largest flower auction. Looks like I have a plane to catch. Come on, let's go. About 50% of exported flowers are sold through Dutch auctions, even as direct sales continue to grow.
Welcome to Aalsmeer, the world's largest flower auction. And I'm standing right smack in the middle of the globe's largest rose warehouse. All the roses you see here got in by 4 a.m. and they'll be distributed across Europe by the end of today. And guess what? The majority of these flowers are from Africa.
The Aalsmeer flower auction sells around 20 million flowers daily, and on special occasions like Valentine's Day and Mother's Day, sales increase by 15%. In 2018, Kenya was its top supplier of flowers, generating a turnover of $390 million. I spoke to an auctioneer to get a feel of what a typical trading day looks like.
So take us through the process of auctioning. I can see that everything has been digitalized.
What happens here, the flowers are in the cold stores. They are not coming through before the clock anymore. They are from the cold stores into the logistics system, and everything is just auctioned off with a picture.
Everything is online, basically.
Basically everything is online.
So where do these flowers end up?
Our main market, I think it's Europe, and then basically the German market, the UK market, the French market, Italian market, and the Dutch market. And a lot of Russian countries, and also the Romania and Hungary, they are growing and picking up.
How high is the demand and what's so special about the flowers from Africa?
The specialty from African flowers, especially from Kenya, is that they are growing in a high altitude, and that's why they have the really big head size. I think a lot of customers, especially on the wholesale market, is really interested in those special varieties and the really big head size.
How many flowers do you sell in a day?
Between 8 or 10 millions, maybe in one day. And that's only roses. And then you have all the other flowers as well.
Given the enormous volumes of flowers sold in Europe, the question of how the unfolding of Brexit would impact the trade flow from Africa has been on the minds of many. Experts are on the fence about this, given the several possible scenarios.
It rather depends in terms of the Brexit scenario whether we're going with a deal or a no deal. If a deal is struck, and there is a deal on the table, but the implementation of that depends on the outcome of the general election. But if that deal goes ahead, then Kenya will continue to trade as if Britain is still in the EU until the end of 2020, what's called the transitional period. And in that period, all the same rules and regulations about trade with the EU will apply. And during that time, Britain will negotiate a trade deal with the EU and all its other trading partners, and also with the East African community. With a no-deal scenario, then that means that product that is passing through Europe will be subject to phytosanitary and customs inspections before it goes into Britain. Because the day that you leave, effectively, our duty-free and quota-free access gets finished.
So for growers in Africa, this is something that they will have to adjust to and actually take into account that the flowers that they will send for the European markets will have to comply with the European market regulations, whereas the flowers they will send specifically for the UK markets might require another set of regulations. So we expect that it will create additional pressure on the supply chain. So definitely some extra costs, extra controls, extra time, extra delays that are also costly when you're dealing with perishable products.
Well, you heard it from the experts. It's a wait-and-see situation. And as the world watches Brexit and how it truly unfolds, how can flower exporters best prepare themselves for the decisions made out of Brexit?
In any case, prepare for no deal, because this is still an option.
In order to overcome that, the British government have introduced what they call TPA, Transitional Protection Arrangements, which will allow duty-free and tax-free and quota-free volumes to go into Britain for about 12 to 18 months. And the same, in a way, the similar sort of arrangement with the deal Brexit, that allows a period of time for permanent trade deals to be negotiated. I would say to them, make sure that your documentation is in good shape, because ours is a delicate product, and any delays in the supply chain has a material effect on the quality of product. So yes, we want them to do what they do even better than they do.